Today we are making homemade Mediterranean bread. For this recipe we're using 500 grams of strong white flour, and in my opinion it's quite important to sieve the flour. It helps in terms of like the feeling and the texture of the dough will be so much better. Moving on, I've got here 300 milliliters of lukewarm water. To this we're going in with 7 grams of dry yeast. Don't get me wrong, you can use fresh if you've got any available, but we got dry, so that's what we're going with. To this I'm adding in half teaspoon of sugar. This will help activating the yeast. Now mix everything together until the caster sugar and the yeast get well dissolved. Make a well into the flour, and it's here where we're adding the liquid. We're going in with half tablespoon of table salt, a quarter of tablespoon of dry oregano, and also I've got here a sprig of rosemary, which I'm gonna use only the leaves, and I'm gonna chop it up finely. These are only 2 of the Mediterranean flavors we're adding in, but also I've got here some sun-dried tomatoes. For the time being, I'm only going in with the oil. If it's a good quality extra virgin olive oil on your sun-dried tomatoes, this is really good because it's gonna enhance that flavor of your Mediterranean bread. Otherwise, if it's just like a regular oil, maybe you wanna change that for a good quality extra virgin olive oil. And at this stage, we're gonna combine everything together. I really enjoy doing this by hand, but you can well do this in the bread mixer. I would say that you need to knead your dough for about 5 minutes, especially if you do it by hand. This way, you're gonna stretch that gluten from the flour, getting a nice and elastic dough, which is what we're looking for if you want to get good results. Now we're gonna go in with the next 2 Mediterranean ingredients, which we're using sun-dried tomatoes and olives. And the reason why I didn't get with them in right from the beginning is because I want to have some sort of texture in there. If you were to add them in right from the beginning by kneading the dough, and putting all that pressure on your dough, most likely they will turn into some sort of puree, and it's not what I'm looking for in this situation. Now this is the time when you need to make your own judgment whether you need to add a bit more liquid or you need to add a bit of flour. Now in this situation it feels like it's just a touch too sticky, so I'm gonna go in with maybe 1 tablespoon of flour, and that should be just fine. Dust a bit of flour at the bottom of the bowl, and in it goes. Get a clean towel on top and find a warm space into your house, whether that's under a duvet or under a pillow, that's absolutely fine, and give it about an hour or until it doubles in size. So it's been about an hour and 15 minutes since we left the dough for proofing, and now this is how it looks like. You'll need a bit of flour to dust your mat. As I'm spinning the dough with the bottom of my palms, I'm pushing in, and as I'm twisting it, it gets a nice round shape. Now, I don't want to cook it like this because it will take forever. It's just too big of a sphere. So we're gonna press it to flatten it in about 1.5 to 2 inch thickness. In goes my dough, and we're gonna leave this to rise once again for about 15 minutes. Meanwhile, we're gonna turn on the oven at 200 degrees Celsius. Before going into the oven, I've got here some extra virgin olive oil, and I just want to drizzle, not a whole lot, about 1 to 2 tablespoons, and some sea salt. A good pinch of this. And now it can go into the oven for about 25 to 30 minutes. We'll check it after 25 and see if it needs more or not. So I've got this out the oven after 25 minutes. The way you know that it's ready, first tap it, and if it sounds hollow, most likely it is. But the best option is probably with a toothpick. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but if you go with a toothpick all the way through, and then when you get it out and it looks clean, that means there is not raw dough inside, so that's cooked all the way through. And before digging into it, leave it on the rack to cool for about 15 minutes. And if you enjoyed this recipe, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and check this recipe somewhere right here, how to make pizza twists, and I'll see you in the next one.